Hi, everybody. My name is Carla Williamson, and I read the book School Talk Gender and Adolescent Culture by Donna Eder. Donna is a researcher, and she and her team they went into a middle school in the Midwest, and they made up a name. So it's called in the book Woodview Middle School, and it contains this middle school is sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. Their purpose of one of they chose middle school because they felt like enough research had been done with elementary and high school, and so they wanted to do middle school, which I thought was great, and I'm glad I got this book. I have a middle schooler, and so it was really interesting for me to read this. Their goal, they were wanting to study the language of the students through daily rituals. And they felt that within the language of rituals, they would discover their knowledge of gender and any inequality of gender. And so they chose their main post where they were observing the students was in the cafeteria. It offered an opportunity for the students to be relaxed. It was their social time, obviously, and it also allowed to discover their environment that they made then with seating arrangements in particular, and with that you see the hierarchy, the status groups, and within that you also see gender. And so, for instance, there'd be a table of high status eighth grade boys, a table of high status eighth grade girls, so on and so forth. But it was interesting because the author really talked a lot about that at the beginning, the placement of the students at the lunch tables, and how sixth graders, they're all in this together at the beginning. They're new to the school. They it was just it was a big difference, their mentality and where they sat, as opposed to seventh graders. There was a little more openness, and by eighth grade, though, they were firm in where they sat, and there were cliques, very clear cliques. So again, this was in the Midwest. It was a predominantly middle to lower class status group, and they were predominantly Euro Americans. And the researchers just let the kids know they were there from the university. They were there to observe them, to see what the kids like to talk about, what their interests were. They had no idea on anything specific. So the main languages that the researchers were studying, obviously they weren't writing anything down when they were with the students. They would do that afterwards. Sometimes they'd sneak in the bathroom and quickly write things down. But the top four categories that they were studying of language was insults, teasing, collaborative stories, and gossip. And so within each of those, to see where the gender knowledge lies and where any gender inequality lies. And so it's really interesting. I really did enjoy this book. I would recommend it. It's interesting because I think it was in the late 90s, maybe early, yeah, 97 it was published. But I mean, obviously I went to school in the 80s, and I still was like, oh yeah, I mean, it made sense to me. It was almost carbon copy of what I dealt with, and it still is happening today. I mean, just from what I know from, I work in a high school, but with my son being in a middle school. So this is, even though it's maybe out of date, it's not out of date. So this school, like I said, they sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. The issue of athletics in this school played a big role in status. So therefore, power, status, where the kids sat, what they were talking about. Definitely with the teasing, the insults, a lot of it referred to aggressiveness. Predominantly, that was like a main thing that the authors, the researchers discovered, was that of aggressiveness. And I wanted to get to that real quick. So often with insults in the storytelling, it involved the bragging about the aggressiveness and the hurting of the opponent. And so the author says that when the boys, and she does call them boys and girls in the book, she refers to them that way, when they receive this message, these insults, and the storytelling, they're getting and receiving the message that they don't need to be responsible for other people's feelings, that each person needs to be responsible for their own feelings. And I thought that was interesting. So I just wanted to touch on that for a minute. And I didn't touch on, there was always a group in each grade of the students that were put off to the side, and she calls them isolates. And they were the ones who most often were targeted with the insults, and the teasing that did involve gender, and particularly the label names, and definitely that rejection also had to do with homosexuality. And I thought that was interesting, as well. But truly, all the language, everything that they gathered, and this was a total of, they were observing for a year, but it was a 3-year project. It really all boiled down to the objectification of women, in all of this. That was the central process that they identified, was the objectification of women. And the author does a great job at the end, really encouraging, everybody, society, the school, parents, to not just read this, but to really question everything, that we say and do and think, and give these kids safe places where they can truly be okay with who they are individually, and that they don't have to conform. She does mention a lot about the fear of being different, and so everybody's conforming. They're all doing athletics. They don't want to be left out, so all the girls want to be the cheerleaders, the boys, the football players. Like I said, athletics in this school was priority. You would see it in some of the responses from the teachers, not that they were observing them necessarily, but yeah, I really think that this is a great book. I'm glad that I got this. I was chosen to do this one. So I encourage you all to read it. Thank you so much.